Hey, Miss Tiffany.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. And you, Mr. Kyle, good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. How are you, Julia?
Doing great. Hello, Councilwoman. Do you prefer is it Hosley, Hyman, or just Hyman? Which one you want?
It does not matter. I'm
Okay.
just blessed to be seen.
All right. Look, I understand that.
It's too long.
Okay?
It's too long. It's just too long. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I appreciate you though. Hi, everybody.
How's your husband doing?
He's doing better. Doing
Good,
better.
good.
I still have but I'm
Okay.
going harder.
All
If you
right.
can hear it in my voice still.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
Hello, Miss Karen. You have 1 minute before the meeting start. Hello, Miss Venus. I know you put something in the chat.
Yes, good evening, everybody.
Tell them hello.
I'm multitasking. I'm working for the organization. I'm on the housing meeting and I'm babysitting
Oh, wow.
tempo.
Mm,
So just bear with me. And I just got off of my work.
wow.
So just bear with me.
It's 6 o'clock. You want to wait? I don't think you have a quorum.
Okay, yeah. We'll wait just a few minutes.
Councilman Hyman, did you go down to Vice President Harris today?
I did not. I opted to not do that. I had my share this summer at our AKA convention.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
And it took us 6 hours to get through to see her.
Oh, wow.
So I just was like, people were fainting. It was not good. It was 13,000 of us. So, but we love we love our vice president. We love that she's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. But I told the mayor, you take a picture and once the mayor has a picture with it, we're good.
Okay. And that explains why so many ambulance was here today then. Because I kept saying, why do they have the ambulance here? Just to, I understood the police, but the ambulance kept throwing me off, but that explains it now.
And then if she runs late, then you could be standing in line. Like that's what took us so long. Like all of us knew she was coming in. And for our ceremony stuff, you have to wear dresses. She had on pants. We were like, okay, now. I was ready to go back. But my daughters, who are now members, who one just crossed in Charlotte last year and the other one just crossed in Chapel Hill, they were
Okay.
very excited, and I was excited too, but I was excited to share the experience with them for the first time
Okay.
being members. They were little when I took them in 2008 to the convention. So
Oh, okay.
I'm broke though, I will tell you that.
So I think you all have a quorum.
Yes, we do. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening for the September 1st Affordable Housing Implementation Committee meeting. We will dive into roll call.
Okay, so Levon Barnes, Laura Beatty, Kyle Balsaman.
Here.
Thank you. Diane Katati,
Here.
Lucia Constantine, S. Nicole Diggs, Tiffany Elder,
Here.
Courtney James asked to be sent an email last night saying she would be absent. I. Jarvis Martin,
Present.
Rita McDaniel. Ms. McDaniel.
I was trying to unmute. I'm here.
All right. Let me see. John Parker,
Present.
Venus Sanders,
Here.
Timothy Stallman,
Here.
Angela Vick Lewis. Okay, roll call is complete.
Thank you. For our agenda today, we will go through the minutes. DHA has property updates for us. The Community Development City Metric Report is out. We'll review that. We'll have another conversation about subcommittee engagement, then open up for public comments before we wrap up. And for the ground rules, as always, please show respect for others' opinions and their opinions. Always presume goodwill, be fully present, one speaker at a time, and you're welcome to unmute or raise a hand for comment for those on the committee. The initial, oops, we have that one. Please use specific examples and enjoy the process. And there was a comment that came to light in an email recently that was requesting that if at all possible, committee members have their cameras up, if that's a viable option for you.
Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Oh, the minutes, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we had, everyone was distributed the June 9th minutes. I don't know if there are any corrections or adjustments from anyone. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the June 9 minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Tiffany. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Okay, great. If everyone could unmute and please, if you approve the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Back to you, Tiffany.
And now Durham Housing Authority staff will present the property updates.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Scott with DHA, and I want to give you all what I hope to be a sort of a quick update on where we are. Next slide, please. So our agenda is to go over to DDMP, provide our updates there, an update on what we're calling DDMP Phase 2, and then just a quick update for those. I think we talked about this at the last meeting, but just again, a quick update on where we are with the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative grant. Next slide, please. Next. Next slide, please. I think oh, no, that slide's a little out of place, but this is again, kind of, no, I'm sorry, go back, please. This slide is a quick overview kind of this DDNP phase 1, if you will. And again, just to refresh everyone, our number one objectives are, one, to replace or renovate the existing 447 public housing units that are located on various sites, not all of them, but some of these sites. One, we want to preserve those 447 units so that they remain in the downtown area. So we'll put them on other sites or other locations, but we will not put them outside of the downtown area, which is represented mostly by the dotted line you see here. Some of it's blocked by the graphics. 3, we want to increase the number of affordable housing units that we have as well. These are more or less be the workforce units. And then 4, we want to make sure that the communities that we build are mixed income communities. They're not going to be, we're not going to build new public housing only communities. We're going to build communities that are a mix of incomes from what might be considered public housing units or 30% and below units, workforce housing units, and also market rate units. And then lastly, by having that mix of units, it allows us to make sure that these developments are financially viable through the long term. One of the challenges that housing authorities face, as we've talked about in the past, is that we are 100% reliant on federal resources to pay for our repairs and maintenance and staffing and long-term repairs. And historically, over the last 2 to 3 decades, we have not seen Congress appropriately fund housing authorities. So we want to create models that help us have a reduced dependency on federal dollars and more of a mixed variety of incomes that will allow us to keep our properties in great shape from here on going forward. Next slide, please. So the first phase of this is the J.J. Henderson site. Next slide, please, Ms. Juliet. There we go. And J.J. Henderson is 177 units, sort of a mid-high rise building. Oh, go back one. And that is being completely renovated from top to bottom. And these are photos showing you what the newly renovated units look like, as well as some of the public space. We are quickly approaching the completion of this, which was our first phase of the downtown development piece that we were doing. And we are looked to be complete by the end of this month with a ribbon cutting ceremony that we'd like to have in October. And we want to, of course, invite all of you to be a part of that. Next slide, please.
Mr. Scott, I think you're a little behind me.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is the joist now.
Yes.
Excuse me, I'm looking at the joist. Is that what you see? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this is the joist, and it's the new construction development that is on the same physical site as the J.J. Henderson Tower. You can kind of see it peeking up there in the middle. We are about 60% complete on this. We had a topping ceremony in June, and now they're doing drywall and exterior siding, brickwork, et cetera, on the exterior. So if you have an opportunity, please drive by and you can get a good sense of where we are with the construction of that. Next slide, Ms. Black. And I think it'll have a couple of shots showing you, or at least a shot showing you where we were back in June. So the picture on the left is when we did the topping ceremony in June, and then what you see in the middle on the right is pretty much where we are today. Oh, they jumped again. That's okay, we can stay right there. Sites, the Elizabeth Street Apartments will be the first phase of that. We are expecting to get started on that. No, it went back. We're expected to get started on that in the fourth quarter, which we're quickly approaching. That will include the demolition of a portion of the existing Liberty Street Apartments where the new construction is going to go up. And then shortly thereafter, we hope to start on phases 2 and 3, which will be for the next phase of that Liberty Street Apartments. I'm not sure, Juliet, where we are with on what you see, but I'm seeing now the Joy still.
So now you should see Elizabeth Street Apartments and Commerce Street Family.
Okay, I am not seeing it on my screen. There we go. Now it popped up on my screen. So and this gives you two renderings of what those buildings are look like. These plans will change a bit, so they won't look exactly like this, but it gives you an idea of some of what that'll look like. Next slide, please. I might have a slow internet connection. I am in my office. So this talks about DDMP phase 2, which were the other 3 sites that are associated with the DDNP. So that's the Fayette Place site, which is a vacant 20-acre site, Forest Hill Heights, and then the DHA Office and Criminal Justice Building. So next slide, please. So these are a number of community meetings that we've been having for 2 of those sites. We have more or less prioritized the Fayette Place site and the Forest Hills Heights site for what we're doing now. We're going to pick up on the DHA office after we get these 2 moving a little further along. On the left are our residents from Forest Hill Heights. Top is when we did a larger meeting for all 3 sites. In the middle and is the Fayette Place site. And then actually that third picture you see is McDougal Terrace. So these are all part of our community engagement meetings that we've been having. We have another community engagement meeting for Forest Hill Heights coming up at the end of this month on the 29th, I think. I'll make sure we get the correct dates out to you. I think it's the 29th. We're still trying to narrow down a location. We had our previous meetings at the W.G. Pearson School, but because school has now started, they don't have the availability of space. So we're looking to have a space at NCCU. Next slide, please. Lastly, just to bring up the rear here on our Choice Neighborhoods Initiative grant, we applied for this back in, I think it was July. We had a meeting with HUD, a virtual site visit. We hoped to hear something in the next few weeks on this. They said they'd make their announcement in September. If we are successful, we will receive a $40 million grant. $6 million of that would be used for neighborhood improvements. $6 million of that would be for our people plan, which is to work with the existing residents on the site, whether they're on the site or if they move away. And then the remaining $23 million will go directly towards the actual physical construction of phases 2 and 3 of the Liberty and Main Street site. So with that, I will close out and open up for any questions that anyone has.
Yes, Mr. Anthony, I would like to know, has the grant been approved for the 3rd phase of the South Side over here on South Roxborough Street?
That's a question for Mr. Johnson.
So this is, and I'll just answer it right now. So the question is, what about the 3rd phase of the Lofts Southside? The developer McCoy Baron Salazar did apply for 9% low-income housing tax credit to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. We have not heard yet. So they have normally make the announcements in August. Of course, August has come and gone. They had actually sent us a communication saying due to some matters that are going on with the economy, they were going to wait till September. So we're too optimistic that we would hear in September, positively.
I thank you.
John, I think I see your hand raised.
Mr. Scott, I'm curious to know what you, what's the prospects? How are you feeling about the grant proposal? the chances for success, and when might that happen? The decision.
Well, that decision will happen as early as next week. And but they told us that the decision would be made sometime in September. We feel optimistic about our choices. Just the numbers alone give us that sort of comfort, if you want to call it that. So what I mean by that, there were 5 finalists. There's a maximum of $50 million per grant, and there's $218 million available. So just basic math means there'll be at least $18 million left over if the other 4 applicants got the maximum 50 million. We were not eligible for 50 given the size of our project. We only eligible for 40. But 18 million would be better than nothing if that's the worst case scenario that we end up facing. But we felt that based on our proposal, based on the feedback that we received during our virtual site visit, we felt that we had done a very good job at presenting why we think that we are an opportunity for them to look good, and obviously for us to look good.
Is there a plan in place if it comes back less than the 40 million? If it's cut in half, I mean, will you be putting most of the money into construction?
That I don't know, because the grant requires you to have these 3 components. So if it's 18 million, theoretically it's 15%, and then the remaining goes towards the construction. So I imagine it'll be broken out that way if it was a scenario where we came back with 18 million. But I really don't know. That's something we would obviously have to hear once they make a decision on what what, if any, amount they're going to provide for us. Yep. Toes, arms, legs, everything you can cross, put them together. Yes. Any other questions for me?
Okay.
All right. Well, I thank you, and I'll yield it back to you, Madam Chair or Co-Chair. And I will bow out. So you all have a great weekend. Everybody be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the presentation. And we will now move to Community Development City Metric Report.
Greetings, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to actually finish up on the financial report that we began discussing at the last meeting. We have a small part to do on that report. And Juliet, if you don't mind, I'll go to the financing policy, which is on page 3. We had covered all of this during the previous session, and we had just a tad bit left before we go to the metric report. And I wanted to just finish this part up. Scroll down some more. A little bit more. Okay, here we go. All right. So the categories that we didn't cover, there were 2 that remaining when we asked the question, what have we had expenditures on thus far? And one of the categories that we shared was the leverage financing pilots. And admittedly, right away, that we have not been able to get a lot of work done in this area already. But this is something that is on our radar. Probably the most active of these is the Durham Affordable Housing Loan Fund that actually was initiated just before the Affordable Housing Bond passed. And this is where we partnered with Duke, Truist, Self-Help, and the city to formulate a loan fund, and all of them contribute in various ways. And also the Minority Initiative, I'm not calling it right. Well, now it's IMED. The National Institute is also a partner in this as well, National Institute for Minority Economic Development. And the purpose was to create a loan fund that developers were purchasing properties that were affordable housing that would come up on the market could move quickly. Usually the financing schemes that structures that nonprofits use involve multiple financing and multiple commitments, and you're just not able to move as quickly as a private developer using private financing. And so this loan fund was created to help, because things were coming on the market very quickly, and a lot of times they're not announced and not advertised. That fact that they're for sale is in small circles. And so this fund was designed to help nonprofits be able to move more quickly, because the players here understand what the issues are, understand how the nonprofit sector that creates affordable housing works, and can move more quickly. We have had some successes, but also it's still some challenges also, but overall, we think this is a good idea. This is a fund, if for some of those who remember the late Phil Wynn, who was the president, former vice president of Duke University, had actually convened the parties, and that's how Duke is a major player in this fund as well. And then we do have funding that we set aside for naturally occurring affordable housing and the preservation and also the creation of accessory dwelling units. We have not, just due to staffing, have not had the opportunity to do quite a bit of research further in accessory dwelling units. You know, the UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, has changed. The issue here is whether as many of you may know, the private sector or the banking market does not finance accessory dwelling units. And so the question is, how do we create some kind of tool to be able to help facilitate the creation of accessory dwelling units for benefit of low and moderate income persons? And that includes whether there be the tenant, or whether they be the possibly the landlord, and how does it make that work? But it requires quite a bit of more research for us, and we've just not been able to do that just yet. So that includes the naturally occurring affordable housing and all of the leverage financing pilots. This is an area too that we talked about at the last meeting, that making adjustments because of other areas that we are overexpending. This may be one that we have to make some adjustments in, as particularly trying to keep multifamily housing projects going through the interest rate costs that we talked about, as well as construction cost increases. Then in terms of the next section is basically the salaries and operating costs that are part of the Forever Home Durham that goes to support the department and our work. This includes salaries for staff. Some things that I will point out specifically to you is line 139, he used lawn care. That's to help us keep the lots mowed. So for example, the lot that was just mentioned, and Southside phase 3, you know, with the grass, it's a big lot, 7 acres, and it needs to be mowed. And so that's where that, on a regular basis, so that's where that is. Then you have, you've had line 141, for example, Moss and Ross. You've seen reports from them before, and they'll be before us at a next meeting, providing on the public information and doing the website. And then another one that you're familiar with, line 145, which is United Minority Contractors of North Carolina, UMC-NC. You've seen them present before us too. That's where the expenditures thus far up till the time of this chart was prepared April. And that's what that line is. And then you have the bond issuance costs. that's not, has not been incurred yet, but will be. Desire of the finance department of the city is when we incur up to maybe half of the bond expenditures, then they will go out to the market, and that does incur a cost. And we pay for that out of the funds that we have here, the bond funds. And then using the next category is the Section 108 loan. As many of you know, when we were working on Southside, we did get a Section 108 loan. This is a HUD tool, financing tool that permits us to borrow against future community development block grant entitlements. And we did to the tune of about $8.8 million. And this is the payment of that loan back over 20 years. And so that's what that is. And so if you look at those categories, you see the totals there. And then the grand total of all the things that we've covered, Juliet, if you would scroll to the right. If you can do a little bit more. If you go to the right, then you see the total of the budget, and which totals $159,956,000. And so that's where the total amount of the $159.9 million affordable housing program comes from. And so you see that in the corner. But you have this before you. Right now, I'm gonna stop and entertain any questions before I move to the metrics. John?
Reginald, we've appreciate the real finishing up what we started at the last meeting. We talked last time about that there may be a way that when some funds aren't being expended in one area to be reallocated towards another area that may still be specific. I'm wondering about the efforts that's going on with the Northgate rezoning development. There was a plan at one time to have affordable housing as part of the plan there. And now I understand it's being they're not planning any affordable housing. Is there any incentives or anything we can do within this budget to kind of incentivize or try to open the door where that might be attractive to the developers?
Actually, that's a good question. And when we're talking about the creation of affordable housing, there's about two tracks. One is the track that is in front of you that mainly deals with subsidy and money and providing subsidy. The other track is using our density bonus, using proffers, and basically going through planning. And my understanding, that project that didn't come through us. We have not really had any involvement with that project in terms of financing or request for financing. And so particularly in the case, all of our funding is competitively big, competitive process. So we have to put out an RFP. So my understanding, and I'm gonna ask Ms. Lotto to chime in, is that project was going the other route that I just mentioned. And for them to come over on our route, they would have to apply to us when we had money available. And that has not occurred. Karen, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So Reginald, are you saying there's no money to offer?
No, right now, there's not any money to offer, particularly a project like that. We don't know what it would be, but we haven't opened up another competitive process.
Yeah, but they are requesting a rezoning, so there is some leverage, possible leverage, or at least to get some discussions going. I was just kind of curious if the city was, anything about trying to, obviously, if the development's going to go on, at one time there was going to be affordable housing as part of the part of the plan. They ended up scrapping it, but developers can change one way and change another. I just was wondering if there might be, if we have some funds like that aren't being used for for the first time loan assistance program, that Is there a way to kind of open up a discussion with the developers to at least, because there's a lot of community support to see it be, have affordable housing where they're going to be doing the development right there.
Reginald, this is Keith Chadwell. If I might just want to add a quick variable. I'm Keith Chadwell from the city manager's office, and just want to add a few of the options being considered in this process are a couple of scenarios where there may not be residential development on the site at all. Based on the community engagement and some of the pushback from the prior negotiations with community and other stakeholders about how that property was to be developed, along with the densities involved and all those kinds of things, a very, very prominent option, and don't want to call it the likely option just yet, but a very prominent option may be that it will be an all non-residential component with a lot less density. And so that's why you haven't seen a very, very furtive effort to be a part of negotiations on how we might supplement something that's affordable. We're not at that point yet.
So are they the only stakeholders that we have for that North Bay property? And do we have to use them? Is there anybody else have put in a bid for them that we can go elsewhere that would want to do what the community are asking, which is affordable housing being put in that area?
Well, the issue is that the folks that own it are the ones that are developing it. They privately own it. They made a multi-million-dollar purchase for it and have always had a mix of uses in mind. When the original considerations of a mix of uses were not to the liking of the greater community involved and didn't get a lot of support as they had to go through the rezoning report, they've really kind of defaulted to some options that they have available that they can financially support at this time. And to repeat, a prominent option will probably be could be a non-residential component of the site.
So does that mean more people that live in that area will be pushed out?
Not necessarily. I mean, the point is what might be tax implications and a variety of things like that from a facility of that type being built. That was the overarching concern on the prior iterations that were considered when it had a lot more density and a lot more intensity as it relates to an exponential rise in tax values and all those kinds of things. Don't expect this to be quite as intense. So we're not thinking that this would necessarily be as gentrifying a circumstance as it once might have been. But they have to do something even in a rezoning to primarily is to remove the component part. That zoning over there is specifically for designed just for shopping centers. And so if they're going to put anything other than just a repeat of a shopping center, almost of the same design and same heights and all those kinds of things, they can replicate what they have. That was a specific zoning that was done for that site. Say rezoning would be necessary regardless of what's put over there.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Any further questions on that topic before I entertain any other questions? All right.
I think Tim has his hand up, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, it's not on that topic, but I mean, not unrelated. I'm curious. I guess I'm just curious about the various RFP lines that are in here. There's like a 16 million multifamily RFP, and I apologize that my memory is just not great from previous meetings, but maybe if you could enlighten us as to what happened with that RFP. And then there's 3 small scale RFPs and what the status of that is. And I was particularly curious if y'all are, if there's a chance of additional RFPs or additional funding for multifamily housing being created. And I think somebody asked that question in the Q&A too, even separately, but.
So we did have an RFP for the 16 million, and there were 4 awardees, and I might not remember all of them, but JFK Towers was one of them. Karen, can you help me with the other? I know that one was Sandy Ridge, Apartments was another. So that's 2.
Sandy Ridge Apartments in Bragtown, Fairhaven Walk also in Bragtown, and Cedar Trace Apartments, which is, I can't remember the exact address. It's sort of, as I recall, it's kind of southeast, but I don't remember. Collectively, it's approximately 680 units that are being funded.
And right now, we don't have plans for another multifamily RFP with the funding that we have in Forever Home Durham, because it's been exhausted. That's one of the areas where we've used money from other areas to have a more robust packaging of multifamily housing. The neighborhood stabilization RFPs, the smaller ones, I'm gonna ask Karen to talk about.
So those are typically RFPs that we issue to support smaller projects, single family development, often home ownership development, small scale preservation deals. We are looking to issue those RFPs. The first one in this fiscal year. We don't yet, the amounts may vary a little bit from what is shown on the chart. That was just a projection at the time. And one of the issues that we have to kind of factor through is we also have some city-owned properties that we want to make available. And one of the considerations we need to work through is to what extent are we going to combine funding with land when we issue our RFPs? So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Karen. Any other questions? All right, if not, then I'll go to the metrics spreadsheet. And so just to recap, we have been discussing the financing to answer the question of how much and where has the funding that we have thus far being spent. There's actually going to be an update of this. We're working on it now that we'll be willing to share. I don't have a time frame right now, but probably in the next 4 to 5 weeks that we should have an update that will include some actuals that I mentioned at the last meeting, but also a revised sheet giving updates and new projections, because what's going to happen, particularly with the out years, is going back to the question that John raised, we may very well need to make some adjustments in terms of our projections for the out years based upon the actuals that we have already incurred. And so what we have here is the report, a separate document that involves the categories that are matching with the financing, but these are metrics or units. So they're either units or services provided. And so, I do not go necessarily go down every line, but we're going to look at the first category, which is the homeless. Remember, you went to the financing sheet, homelessness was the first category that was listed. And so what you have before you, if you look down the left, you have the different actual projects or services that we provided, and with some of them with vendors, where we do have vendors, the actual vending listed and what the goal is. And then we have the budget. And if you would scroll over just a tad bit, Juliet. So with Urban Ministries, the metrics, the number of services, people served. And so you see the numbers there. And then we have some projections that we have. So remember, this is 5-year plan, and we have what we completed thus far, and then what we project to complete. And you can scroll all the way to the end. You see what we think we will complete over the 5 years based upon where we are now. Of course, that's going to be revised when we come back with additional updates. Maybe revised up, maybe revised down, but that's how you read this chart. So Juliet, let's go to the next line down, next category then. So as you go back to the other side.
I got to figure out how to do it because my screen,
Oh,
my
gotcha.
screen is covering up the bottom, so I
okay.
can't see
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
So give me a minute. This is
Oh, that's all right. Well, I'll just talk about it while you get into it. The next section is
there we go.
emergency shelter and rapid rehousing totals. And that's a category and set of categories where
I got it.
okay, beautiful. A set of categories where we're still doing work in those categories. Karen, do you have anything to add about these?
No,
Sure.
I think the important thing to add here for the homelessness contracts in general, and I think Reginald may have already flagged this, we're not tracking individual performance measures by contract because a lot of these performance measures, a lot of these contracts really go to supporting the homeless system as a whole. For example, funding coordinated entry, which is the front door of the homeless system, funding unsheltered coordinating agency that does outreach to people who are living, in tents or in cars or things like that, funding the agency that maintains our database. So rather than tracking individual performance measures, what we're doing is tracking the homeless system performance as a whole. So those numbers that you see up above, the 575, the 263, are the number of persons that the Durham continuum of care as a whole helped to find housing for the period of time covered by our official system performance measures that are reviewed by HUD on an annual basis. So we only update these numbers annually when we get our new system performance measures from HUD. So that's why you don't see individual contract measures. We're really looking at the overall performance of the homeless system in housing persons experiencing homelessness.
Thank you. And the other subcategories, Juliet, if you would scroll down. Include homeless system investments and also technical assistance and capacity building. This is where we have funds, not bond, this is actually not bond funds, but it's part of other funds that we're using as part of the 160 million from federal sources and some local that we're using to invest into the homeless system. Because one of the things that's important, as Karen mentioned, the metrics are system metrics, but we have to think of the system, homeless system, as one entity, has many players. But when HUD looks at it, they don't look at the individual players, they look at the system as a whole, and we're rated as a system as a whole. And so we have to invest into the system and how things coordinated and improvement. And we have made some improvements there. But that's how these metrics are evaluated and put here. And so I want to just share that. And HOPWA assistance as housing opportunity for persons with AIDS. Juliet, if you scroll to the left.
And Reginald, if I can just jump in on this one, this is another one where we are using, rather than the individual contract performance, we're using the collective performance of our two HOPWA providers as we report to HUD on an annual basis in our annual reporting, or our whatever consolidated annual performance something report, the CAPER. So that's why there's only one line filled out. It's not because DSS is not doing work. It's that the number that you see there is the combined reporting. And the reason we do this is because we're trying, the time periods that we report to HUD don't always line up with the time periods of the contract. So in the effort to have a consistent set of numbers, we are using the HUD numbers. Otherwise, it gets hard to match numbers.
Thank you.
So if is the Hopper funded by federal money?
Yes, it is. Yes, ma'am. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Super. Then the next metrics category is the multifamily rental. And if you see, you listed familiar projects in Juliet. You see the budgets for those projects in Juliet if you scroll over to the left. This first category is the downtown revitalization plan, DDNP, that the Housing Authority just talked about. And if you see numbers there, like the 177 is the JJ Henderson rehab. And then the 80 that you see there is the one of the buildings that Mr. Scott just talked about. And then if you go there, projections on the additional units that they are projected to complete. You know, some of them are still negotiating contracts and negotiating plans, but these are the projections that we have as of right now for the out years. And what I consider the out years are just projections the next year and the following year after that. And so that's how one reads that chart. And then we have another category that if you look is the downtown plan acceleration or new 4% low-income housing tax credit. This is a category that when we proposed the plan we had for if we needed to support additional work in the housing with the Housing Authority, we could, or we could go for additional 4% tax credits, which we had not really been doing quite a bit of in Durham. And so we have ended up doing a combination of both. But this is resources. If you see these projects, Ashton Place, which we there's the Willett Street, basically Willett Street Apartments Phase 2, and then the Farrington Road apartments that are being constructed in Hardy Street. And then the multifamily request for proposals that we already talked about, that was a total of $16.7 million. And then Southside Phase 3, additional 100 units is $7.7 million. And scroll over, Juliet, to the right. And so you see the number of units that these projects are either putting forth or will create, I'm sorry. And so you see the 100 units, for example, for Southside, provided that we get the tax credits that were asked about earlier, it will be additional 100 units of affordable housing. And then when you look at the end and you see those totals there, that's what we will estimate that we will project that we will accomplish over the 5 years of the affordable housing plan. Next line, next category. You have the multifamily preservation and outreach. This is an area that we have not done much work in thus far. And we hope to do more in that area. Hopefully we can get through this COVID situation. The preservation outreach also includes a partnership with Community Development Department, Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and the Durham Housing Authority on an employment pilot. And as I've shared with you before, this has met some challenges due to COVID. But we have not been, I think it's probably just had less than a handful of folks in, and hopefully as things begin to open up, that we will be able to have more persons enrolled in this employment pilot. And then you see the, Juliet, you can scroll over to the left, to the right, I'm sorry. And so you begin to see the totals on the multifamily, and then we'll also include the projections over there to the right. You can go to the next line, Juliet. And then in neighborhood stabilization, this is the area where some work is underway. And this is also with Durham Community Land Trustees. And then this is the new request for proposals that Karen just talked about earlier that we'll be putting forth. And then the next category is the home repair rehabilitation total. This is reminded that this is Habitat for Humanity, which has the mountain repair program, and then there's a substantial rehabilitation program that it will be implementing in-house. And so if you scroll over to the right, you can see the numbers that have been handled by Habitat for Humanity, and then the projections for community development for the substantial rehab. We've actually, Habitat for Humanity, if you remember, does the intake for the substantial rehab. They're just going through some applications. We had the team they've met in the past couple of weeks. We're finalizing some applications. And so we hope by the beginning of the year, we can start some actual substantial rehabs that the city will be administering. So Habitat for Humanity does the intake, takes the application, but then for substantial rehabs, it's then turned over to us so we can administer the actual work that's being done. And then, which is different from the minor repair where Habitat for Humanity does the intake and does the work themselves. Next category, property tax reach, homeowner education. This is the area that we have not, we've actually, going back to the conversation that we have, taken money out because we were just not able to do this work. And we've taken money out to use in other categories. The next one is the down payment assistance development. We have not, remember that program just got underway earlier this year. If you scroll over to the left, you see we have some loans some projections on what we hope to accomplish based upon where we are. But remember that one just started in the spring and they're going through applications now. Next line. The eviction, the eviction diversion with legal aid. This is the number of low-income houses stabilized. And you can see the numbers that Legal Aid of North Carolina has been able to stop from being evicted and keep the houses stabilized. These are actual numbers, and then we have some projections, and you can see at the end what they're hoping to do over the 5 years of support from the city. Next line. So the employment pilot we talked about earlier, it's just moved to another moved up to another category. And so just to show the balancing in terms of accounting, that's the reason it's listed there with nothing beside it. And then we have the leverage financing pilots. We talked about that. I can't remember if we have any units on this one. If you scroll over. So Karen, on the loan program, can you talk a little bit about what has been accomplished with the Durham Affordable Loan Program?
Sure. So to date, the Durham Affordable Housing Loan Program, and I actually just pulled up their annual report to this effect, has disbursed about 40% of its capital, and now has loans in the queue that will disperse the balance of the remaining capital to, and I apologize, I've lost the quarterly report. So they are now heading towards being fully deployed. This is what's called a revolving loan fund. So loans are out for a period of time, then they get repaid, and then that capital is redeployed to a new use. So it had a bit of a slow start, but is now picking up some steam, and we expect to be fully utilized in the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you. Next category, scroll down, Julianne. This is the basically the category that matches with the salaries and operating, and basically financial. This does not result in any units or any people served, but it's the support for everything that's above this that we've talked about. And then we've also talked about the bond issuance cost. So scroll down. I think this is it, Juliet. So yeah, these don't have units and services that attach to them, but you see at the bottom of the sheet that you have the goals that we have talked about since we began. And then you have what has been completed. This is as of April, and what is projected in the totals, and the total versus the goal. And you can see where we are short, where we meet it, where we're over. And so you have that little chart, which makes a summary. So what's above you in the detail, but then it's boiled down to this chart right here. And you can see how we are faring. And so that concludes the metric report. Actually, I was able to do it faster than in the financial. But that's how that works. And we'll be doing coming up with the update later in the next probably 5 weeks. So I'll stop there. Juliet, how am I on time? Well, I take it I'm fine.
We have about 15 minutes left according to the agenda. So we have time for questions if anyone has any. Thank you for that, Reginald.
You're welcome. You're so very welcome.
Any questions from the committee regarding the metrics?
I think there's some in the chat.
Do you want to open that up?
So you had one question, I think it was from Mr. Scott. They wanted to know the status of Matt Duga Apartments and the relocation plan for residents.
That's a housing authority question.
Okay. The second one is Mr. Johnson indicated that funds for naturally occurring affordable housing might be reallocated to multifamily projects. Can he elaborate, please? Would that decision need to go back to council, or what would the process be?
So the process would be that we have probably already overspent what we had allotted for multifamily production. And so one of the things that we have to do is make sure everything balances out. So some of that we may have to make some adjustments to. We have made it at the administrative level. In terms of ADUs, if we don't do the research that I talked about and figure out a way to be able to move forward with it, and housing is still needed, we need to put that resources where housing is needed, and not just let the money sit there. Karen, can you talk a little bit about ADUs and the challenge that we're having there?
Yes, we actually, so accessory dwelling units, we commissioned some research kind of to help us figure out whether and how our strategy is to engage in supporting accessory dwelling units. As Reginald indicated, one of the key challenges really is how the financial markets look at ADUs, and the fact that as a general, in a general case, homeowners cannot factor in the rent that they expect to receive when they are kind of sizing their mortgage. So it essentially means you've got to pay for the ADUs with equity or with cash, which a lot of people don't have. We have some ideas around financial products, but there's a lot of pilots going on across the country around financing accessory dwelling units, and one of the lessons learned from those pilots is that they are relatively low yield, as in relatively few units are getting created, and they require a great deal of administrative effort to move forward. And currently, we are deploying our capacity to kind of higher yield strategies. And when we get to a point, and so we put ADUs on hold until we have the bandwidth to really think through whether or not it makes sense for us to deploy to get involved in this place. Because what ideally we'd like to do is get to a place where the city pilots something that becomes more sustainable, but there are some real challenges in the financial markets to making that happen.
Thank you. Juliet, are there any more questions in the chat?
No, but Kyle has his hand up, and then whoever has that phone number, could you please rename yourself?
Hi, this is Lucia Constantine. I just had a follow-up question about the NOAA fund. I'm curious what additional research is required for that. And I think that preservation is a huge need in the city right now, so I wouldn't want to see that money diverted elsewhere, although I understand that ADUs might have a high administrative cost.
Well, let me also clarify, there are two different funding lines that we're talking about here. The ADU line is actually, preservation, there is a preservation research line, and then there is then the financial line under leverage financing pilots. For preservation, that leverage financing pilot amount that is sitting in that same line as accessory dwelling units was basically saying, this is funding that we're allocating for the idea of creating new loan products to try to support different kinds of affordable housing development. One idea might be ADUs. Another idea might be preservation of rental affordable housing. Is there a way that you can deploy a loan product to preserve affordable rental housing? Right now, to be honest, we have not had the capacity to really figure out, is there a loan product that would make sense, that would be attractive, and that would be sufficient for to actually preserve affordable housing. We know that we can put grants in, but this really is intended to be a loan product that would be leveraged with other capital in the market. And we don't really have, there's not a good example for us that we're kind of looking at right now, and we haven't had the capacity to do the research and really the conversations with owners of existing rental housing to figure out whether there's a loan play here. Right now, the preservation funding that we have been doing, which is we have been doing preservation, but we've been doing it with our more traditional gap financing projects. So, for example, one of the projects we funded in our last multifamily RFP is JFK Towers, which is the preservation of 178 project-based rental assistance units. Another project that we funded is Ross Road, as you know, which was preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing. And then we also funded ACRA, which is the preservation of 16 units for persons living with HIV/AIDS. So we're still doing it.
Yeah.
This was a different window that we just haven't had capacity to look at.
Okay, so the distinction is you're looking at loan products that could be targeted toward either small scale owners or maybe individual owners. Is that
probably small scale owners, and by virtue of being a loan, it's a really shallow, like a very thin subsidy. And so the question is that thin subsidy, is there a model that suggests that thin subsidy is enough to make it possible? Okay. And we don't have a whole lot of money, I think we have 3.5 million or something sitting in that line. And just to put it in context, you know, preserving Ross Road has spent more than that, and that's the 142 unit project.
Great. Thank you.
Kyle?
Yeah, just a little bit on the ADU front. So last year I worked with a company that was putting together ADUs in California, and there was actually a company that was providing financing on those with the ADU as collateral. So maybe look into something like that in this area. I think the homeowner, the property owner, was still responsible for putting in plumbing and everything, foundation. But as far as the ADU, they were financing with the ADU as collateral. So
yeah, and there's companies out on the West Coast that are doing that.
Yeah.
And there's another one in Portland that has been doing something similar. I don't know that any of them are active in this market yet. And there is also, but that certainly does. And if that happens, and that kind of solves in a lot of ways the ADU financing, although not necessarily the question of how affordable the ADUs will be is one of those, you know, open questions that we have to figure out. But yes, I would love it if one of those companies came into the Durham market.
Thank you. Juliet, are there any other questions in the chat?
No, wait a minute.
Tiffany has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to tack on to the ADU conversation. I know from speaking with the lenders that I work with, there are a couple factors, one being whether the ADU is attached or detached. Attached is much easier to finance than detached because sometimes lenders view it as an addition to your home as opposed to a tiny house in your yard. Two, I was wondering if it's been considered, you know, the ADU financing being looked at as sort of gap funding to get it built, with the understanding of the owner being pre-qualified for a refi after they get the build completed and get it tenant occupied. And now they've added value to their property and they can refinance and come out. You know, if they sort of pre-qualify for that, then the ADU financing can be really powerful in funding that upfront build and then the owner going behind with a refi after it's built out and occupied.
So the gap financing model is actually, is one that we do want to look at. And not necessarily the fund up front with a refi in the back. That's actually going to get more challenging now because of the changes in interest rates. Yeah. It's more the question of, is there a sliver, like a portion of the ADU financing that just cannot be covered, that if the city could come in and provide it, that then make it possible for the owner to get over the hump. The other piece that has to be a factor in all this is the only way that the city would engage in this is if the ADU on the back end is affordable, is rented at an affordable rate. That has pros and cons to that. It creates an affordable unit, but it also means that the owner can carry less debt. So it's a real, and so there's just a lot of modeling that needs to go into seeing what is even feasible and what makes sense. A lot of the two types of ADU pilots that exist right now that we looked at, one, we're doing 100% financing of it. One was doing 100% financing of ADU, a couple were. That eats up your money really, really fast because, you know, you're doing long-term loans. And then the second was actually creating a whole new mortgage product whereby the owner financed into that mortgage product that would factor in the rent from the ADUs. That one hadn't gotten off the ground yet. So I think we're trying to figure out, is there a third path where you kind of can finance a portion of the ADU and that makes your money go further. But we're not there yet. And we just haven't had capacity. And I will say that up until now, the financing pilots really are in the low single digits in terms of the number of units that they've financed.
Thank you, Karen. Tiffany and Diana, turn it back over to you.
If there are no other questions.
I'm sorry, one more just came in. Can loan program dollars be used for deposits towards ADUs, which are otherwise traditionally financed? Also, I believe the federal government changed the rules July the 1st to allow potential revenue from ADUs to be used in an owner's debt to income ratio. Please look into that.
I would just say that that's good information and definitely something that we need to look into and we haven't evaluated.
Thank you. That is it.
All right. Want to thank Community Development for those two presentations and for all the questions coming in. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is subcommittee engagement. This is a topic that we have touched on in a couple meetings. I've had several emails back and forth with individuals who are interested. So I just want to recap really briefly so that the group can start working toward a final decision as to whether this is a go or no go for the committee. Remembering that one, participation in a subcommittee is not a requirement of participation in the Greater Affordable Housing Implementation Committee. Also keeping in mind that the subcommittees in large part have to be run similarly to this committee with public meeting announcements, minutes taken, reporting, and those facets. So there would need to be a point person, et cetera, in place for any groups that were to form under this larger Affordable Housing Implementation Committee. Quick recap. The groups that were identified at a meeting back in, I'm not sure what month that was, not sure if you remember, Diane, but the first one was bond programming for first-time home buyers and middle-income renters. There were folks who were very much interested in the fact that there were bond funds outlined or carved out for items, but programs hadn't yet been created, and the committee can provide research and guidance and feedback on how to shape these programs. The second of the 6 suggested groups was research and analysis on what other areas are doing and policies that have worked elsewhere, possibly combine this with the above group. The third is partners, synergies, and opportunities with other Durham affordable housing focused organizations. 4 is a site plan visit. A site visit planning committee. Site plans, that's bringing my work into this meeting. Subgroup 5 is broadening the lens on topics with leadership and helping them to understand and get up to speed on housing issues in a timely fashion. And the 6th group was crime and safety. So the one thing that we've spoken about is we have to be careful to stay within the purview within which we were charged. And it's very easy to sort of lump everything in to the topic of affordable housing. But I know that this committee was charged with a certain task. And so the subcommittees would need to define what it is they want to focus on, but still remain within the purview within which the larger committee was charged with regard to the housing bond and helping to assist with that, with oversight of that and reporting. So I have, sorry about the motorcycle going by outside. I have received some emails from Angela Vick-Lewis and Venus Sanders and Laura Beatty, who are interested in potentially leading one of the subgroups. If anyone else has an interest in leading any of the subgroups, please just toss it in the chat or feel free to speak up and mention that now. But again, I do have the list of areas of interest that the individuals who wanted to participate in a subgroup identified with, but now would be the time to sort of talk through any questions you have and start moving toward organizing into the groups that you plan to participate in so that we can move forward with that or decide not to move forward with that. So that was a mouthful. Any comments based on what I just shared?
So will you all be involved in the subcommittees as well?
Yes, actually, I can, if I can put in the chat. I know Diane had an interest in subcommittee 2 or 3. I had an interest in subcommittees 1 or 2 as well. So I think both of us would be participating in one way, shape, or form in those subcommittee groups. I think Diane and I agreed that we would be participants as opposed to leading those subcommittees, since there were individuals who identified as wanting to take a lead on those roles.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? I'm scanning the screen here. And a quick question for Karen, would it be helpful for a subcommittee to help with the research involved in identifying programs along the ADU conversation that we were having? Or some of the things that you mentioned, community development might be limited on staffing for? Is that something that could be passed to the subcommittee if it's sort of simple, direct research that can then be handed back to community development to help on, or would that work?
And it's funny you should say that, because I was actually thinking something along those lines. I think it would be great to have research done on the ADUs. I think the question really would be, what does the subcommittee want to take on? Because what's needed really is starting to figure out what is a viable loan product from the city that leverages our money with other people's money and allows us to create ADUs that can be rented at affordable rents. So it's it's not there's a bit of work involved in doing that. And probably some, I think done most effectively also with conversations with builders and lenders and things like that to really help inform it. So I don't know how much the subcommittee really wants to take on or feels comfortable taking on.
Yeah.
That's the most direct. I mean, the other is, we did a scan 3 years ago, is there an up, of models? Is there, an update to that that might be useful to look at as well? That's maybe a slightly lighter lift, but still not a trivial amount of work. And I don't want to minimize that part. And by that, I mean of what other cities are doing, what other communities are doing to support ADUs. Our scan is 3 years old at this point, 2.5 years old. So have people come up with, creative new things since then.
Okay. Yeah, and that seems to fall in line with this second subgroup topic. If it makes it easier, let me cut and paste this into the chat. I'm not sure how this will format, so I apologize in advance if this is messy. Yeah, that's messy. But those were just the subgroups and the topics. And some of what you just said seems to fall under the second subgroup, research and analysis on what other areas are doing and policies that have worked elsewhere, that if there's anything that can help. And I know that we had individuals interested in that topic. I'm looking at the list. We had at least 1, 2, 3, 4 individuals interested in that topic. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how this can be most useful and still, again, stay within our purview for this committee. Let me start by asking Angela, Venice, and Laura. Well, is Laura here? Angela and Venice, at least. Are you still interested in serving as leads for the subcommittees? I did get your emails on that.
Yes, I will.
Okay, awesome.
It's new to me, but I'm definitely willing to give it my 100%.
Okay, sounds good.
Angela's not here tonight.
Oh, okay, Angela's not here. Then maybe it would make sense. I know that, okay, this is where I need your help, Juliet. Is it okay to have a conference call with the 2 or 3 individuals who want to be subgroup leads so that they can get the information they need and get pointed in the right direction? I know that any meeting outside of this meeting, depending on the numbers, could create a quorum that requires a public meeting, and I I know we have to be careful with those guidelines.
Mr. Johnson, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, you can meet with the prospective co-chairs.
Okay. Okay. Then maybe what we can talk about, if there are any topics in community development, and we don't have DHA here, but if there are any topics that fall into these committees that would be helpful, definitely feed them over. And then I am happy to follow up with a conference call to see where these might fit and if that's of interest, so that the groups can form and potentially start heading down that path of looking at these items before our November meeting. Is there anyone that has any other comment or concern or question about the subcommittee topic? Oh, okay, and I saw your message, Laura.
Kyle, do you want to read what you put in the chat or state what you put in the chat?
Yeah, sure. So I have some resources that may be of help. Got some guys that started a new company in Alameda, California that's doing exactly what you were talking about as far as ADUs. Different market though, so the value may not work out here. But at least they could give us some idea of how the ADU market works. They've probably learned a lot over the past 2-3 years, so maybe helpful resource.
That would be great. That sounds like it would be great. And again, anything that we can do to help support what community development is doing with distributing and determining how best to leverage bond funding would be great. Especially since I know this group is very eager to do a deeper dive and be more engaged into some of these topics. And again, these subcommittees are what the groups create themselves to be. This just seems to be a topic that would be useful, you know, in the present. So I would say let's run with it. Thank you for that, Kyle. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Can we open up for any additional public comments? Juliet?
Yes, ma'am, you have 14 coming over, so give me one moment.
Good evening. Am I here? Can you hear me? And what's going on here?
Hold on one second. You're coming into the group, so please hold on a moment.
Okay.
And we're going to use our raise hand feature.
Great.
It's quite a few.
I think I have everybody in.
All right. Great to see everyone. Thank you for coming out. Are there any comments, questions, concerns from those who just joined? If you would use as Juliet mentioned, use the raise hand feature so that you can be unmuted and called on.
You have one hand and they have 2 minutes.
I do.
Hey there, good evening. Thanks for making some time for community input. It won't come as much of a surprise to many of you on here why I'm joining on. Today's call has been really informative, and I see it as a launching pad to be able to continue to learn and wayfind through this particular request. To hopefully get some effective things done. As you all know, I've been doing a lot of outreach throughout the city of Durham regarding multimodal transportation. I'm a fellow commissioner, but on a different commission. I'm on the Bicycling and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, and we're doing a lot of work around trail development throughout the city. And currently there's 3 really awesome trail projects happening in very sensitive parts of Durham. One of them is the rail trail, formerly the Durham Beltline, that will end closer towards Avondale. And then we've got Third Fork Creek Phase 2. And then we've also got the Kelly Bryant Bridge Trail, named after one of our beloved elders and civil rights leaders here in Durham. And so I just wanted to raise the fact that during the conversation about the rail trail, which brought up a broader conversation about how we preserve affordable housing near the corridors of these multimodal forms of transportation. These are not just, trails are not just agnostic, passive places of recreation. They are also ways for people to get to and from things that they need to do in a safe manner, in a pleasant manner, hopefully in a way that adds to their quality of life. And active transportation is something we think should be accessible to all. And so in that vein, one of the requests we had made during a lot of the advocacy that started a little bit before the pandemic was to make sure that there is a parallel strategy, not just to do great engagement towards those who would be most directly impacted by the building of these trails.
Your 2 minutes is up.
But that we would also locate places along these corridors that could be right for affordable housing development. Thank you. Y'all are tougher cookies here than we are at BPAC. I'll just say that.
Thank you for that idea.
You have another hand.
James Farah.
You need to unmute, sir. And you have 2 minutes.
Sorry, Jim Savara with the Coalition for Affordable Housing and Transit. We're very interested in seeing new infill affordable housing being built along the rail trail, and then see that carried on with the other trail corridors around the city. We would hope that the Community Development Department will be in a position to make a presentation at the public meeting in September regarding the rail trail, about what the options are, where development might occur. The rail trail master plan identified places where there were going to be parks. Those park spaces could be devoted to housing instead, we would hope. And also 2 sites were identified for affordable housing. Are those sites realistic? And can the publicly owned sites be used? I got some good feedback from Mr. Johnson today, saying one of those sites is not very, very good, but it's that kind of assessment that we need, so we know how we can move forward. Then we're also interested in trying to see a new citywide program put in place that would help reduce the pressure on low-income renters to help them stay in their units. And there are several hundred of them in close proximity to the rail trail, based on Triangle J Council of Governments research. But how do we keep people from being forced out by rising rents? Thank you very much.
I see a message from Bragtown, or a hand raise from Bragtown.
You need to unmute. You have 2 minutes, Bragtown.
Which one? There's 2 of us here. Okay, quick question on, I think I sent it in the chat, the study on senior affordable AMI 30 to 50%. Has the study, I saw you had some in the chart, Reginald, about in the affordable, but seniors are particularly different, I think, category because of the mobility around where they are built, and also the places that are built. And seniors where they currently are being pushed out because of the high rents. So I'm just wondering, is there just a direct study on the seniors, especially seniors who are on fixed income other than DHA products? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So what I would say is that we haven't done a study on direct seniors. We do know that the seniors have mobility challenges. The income is just the same. The income requirements are just the same whether you're senior or not. But one of the things that we recognize is the need for additional senior housing. That's the reason Ashton Place, where we've applied for tax credits, which is a Willett 2, is actually all seniors. That's a senior, and that's not Durham Housing Authority. So that's one of the projects that we have that's definitely, of course, going to be senior designed and that kind of with seniors in mind. I don't know that we have another project underway, but hopefully if tax credits come for the loss at Southside, it will have seniors in mind, but it won't be all seniors.
And there's another question from Becky.
Ms. Flanders, you can unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay, good. Okay. I am here to advocate for affordable housing along the rail trail, along with Archie's and Jim. We are following up on something that started in 2018 2021 when they made when the city was applying for a grant to construct the rail trail. This was the RAISE grant from the Department of Transportation. And we were approached by the Department of Transportation to endorse this grant. And, you know, we read the grant. We had passed up the opportunity before that to endorse the rail trail planning because we, along with a lot of other people in town, were concerned that the rail trail would lead to more gentrification. So, but when the grant, they went, I don't have time to tell you the background, but the grant came out to be very supportive of affordable housing. And I would like to read you a couple of quotes. Let's see, under a key goal of the Durham Beltline project is to expand equitable access to jobs, housing, and open space by providing connections to transit, encouraging development of affordable housing along the corridor, and enabling safe access to essential service. The Beltline creates opportunities to transform underserved communities in the study area. So I am trying to find out, what is the Rail Trails project's plan for encouraging development of affordable housing along the corridor? And so can I ask you all that? And is my time already up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So there seems to be a lot of interest about housing around the rail trail. How can we best facilitate or assist with that?
Well, do you want to say something? We have talked to Reginald about it some, and we have first asked this. We think that the city kind of made promises with this grant proposal that our rail trail is not going to be like the one in Atlanta and other places where they did not get out in front of the danger of gentrification. And our project was going to be different in that it was going to encourage affordable housing and prevent do things to prevent displacement. So so that's why, so we signed a letter saying, yes, that's a great idea. Well, this is a great plan. We endorse that. So we first went to the department, to the general services, who is in charge of this grant, of course, you know, and I don't know whether y'all have any budget for it or not. But the Department of General Services said, we can't do that. You should go to the Department of Community Development. So now on the second stage, we are asking, you know, how is the city, what do you know about how the city is going to encourage development of affordable housing along the corridor? So I want the answer to that question. And I have, a couple other if I had time, but also somebody, I don't know whether it's you or General Services, needs to evaluate, at the very minimum, evaluate the publicly owned sites along the rail trail to see if possibly housing could be built on them instead of a park or something, or a parking lot, and there's a limited number of parcels, that we would like for somebody to look at before this meeting that the Department of the General Services Department or their consultants are having for some community engagement meeting that I believe is September the 28th. I'm not sure of the exact date. So we would like to have somebody from your people, whether it's the department or the committee. We'd like some support here. The city has made some promises to the funder that they're going to enforce and encourage affordable housing. We want to see how it's going to happen.
I know that there was a request that came in from Ideal to help identify parcels, and that process has sort of started. The request has gone into the appropriate departments to start looking at that. So providing that information can be helpful. Again, I know that it's always challenging here with making sure that we maintain our focus, but also that we help facilitate the conversation around affordable housing even outside of this purview, because it's an important topic and we want to assist. So I think the first step is our getting that information back over about parcels that are in the vicinity that are city owned or privately owned. Again, privately owned parcels are to the whim of the owner, but getting a list out seemed to be doable. I think that's something that this committee and community development can assist with. And maybe we can have some more conversation about what beyond that can be helped. Oh, go ahead, Reginald.
Yeah, I'll say this so I understand the question, and I'm not going to play, but I'll say this: there are different roles that the departments play. Just to be candid with you, and what we've done is we have asked General Services to produce a list of properties which they are working on. Actually, they have shared some with us already. But there are other steps that were involved, because we can't tell whether a property can have affordable housing on it or not. That involves another department, which involves planning. And so we are going to look at one, for example, the one lot that Mrs. Savara had mentioned, among other lots, I knew right away, only because I had inquired with General Services, that particular lot has a deed restriction on it. Though it may look nice for affordable housing, the deed says no, that it must be a real trailhead. And that's the folks who deeded it to us. That's the requirement that goes along with it. Karen, do you have anything else to add?
The only thing I would flag, in addition to that property analysis, is just a reminder that the city of Durham is supporting a great deal of affordable housing development in the central core right now, including 133 units that are right by the starting point, one of the starting points of the Beltline Trail. That's the 82 unit Willard Street apartment and the 51 unit Ashton Place that is under development. So there is, if you look at Central Durham in general, a lot of affordable housing investment happening in that area.
Okay. That's at the next to the transit. Willard Street is the next to the transit station, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I had a follow-up question about that from BPAC's side of the fence, if that was okay. Am I permitted to ask? Okay. So I know these are different rules. We're so much more relaxed at BPAC. So essentially, what we're encountering also as we consider how that trailhead is connected to American Tobacco, BPAC has been encountering some difficulties with the developer that we feel could also maybe, we might just go ahead and share our letter with you all to see if y'all want to sign on to it as well. We've submitted comments to the planning department, as well as the developer, to assist us in getting the developer, in our opinion, to do the right thing to provide a proper connection between AT&T and the trailhead of rail trail, given that there are 2 affordable housing projects along that corridor, which would be JJ Henderson and Willard Street Apartments. And so that's an aside from all of this, but trying to, be as comprehensive while we're here. But that letter's been written, so it'll just be a collegial alley-oop.
Oh.
And I see Mr. Savara's hand. Is it still up from the prior? Or do you have a new question?
It's a new hand.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Just a quick comment about all the housing downtown doesn't address the need that we're trying to address. We want the rail trail and the other corridors to get people to downtown, to the central bus station, to the possibility of a regional rail station in the future. So the concentration of affordable housing downtown isn't really taking advantage of the rail trail. That's where we want to get the people to. It's nice it'll have an amenity to take the rail trail to go around the city, but it's not adding real transportation option for them. So we want to get it out around the corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee or the public?
But thank you for getting that analysis going. I mean, that's we could imagine other things that could be done, but just getting the data out about the publicly owned land is a good first step.
Right. I think that is it. I'm not sure if these are new hands for Ideal or James.
Sorry, it was a mistake.
Okay. Well, in the absence of any other questions or comments from anyone, we will hand it back over to Co-Chair Katati.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us this evening. I think we had a lot of good discussion, and Reginald and Karen, thank you as always for the financial and metrics. That's very helpful information. That was an attachment. I did want to ask whether that would be posted to the website. I guess it is because it was a part of the presentation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So coming up, our next meeting is November 3rd, Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. And I guess look forward to an email about the JJ Henderson October ribbon cutting. And of course, the announcement on the
CNI choice.
CNI, thank you, Choice Neighborhood Initiative. I was forgetting the C was choice, not community. So yeah, so we'll look forward to that. And then again, a reminder that the community meeting for Forest Hills Heights is on September 29th. So those we'll also see those. So without further ado, I'll see you in November. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.